Hey,
Hey Kim, how you doing?
I'm all good, lovely. How are you?
Well, I'm all right. I'm slightly concerned my camera is not like the right height, but I'm going to live. We'll live. I mean, sometimes we just got to be honest, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to be perfect. And the thing is that we are perfectly imperfect people because all human beings are.
Yeah, I actually forget what the chances of us being born are. It's pretty serious, right? Like for us to be born as this particular individual, like I know it's on Google. I'm going to look and I'm going to tell you in a minute. So, how's your week been?
It's been really good. It's been a bit hectic, a little bit manic. Um, we're doing all that work to get ready to launch International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. So that's exciting, but also not much time to go until we get there. So I think this week's been a bit full on with that. We've done some podcasts, we've done some interviews, I've done a couple of clubhouses. So really trying to, I guess, push myself out of my comfort zone and try and continue to grow, because I think that's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? To learn and grow. And as you know, my nan always used to say, every day's a school day, and I think she's right. So I'm trying really hard to make sure that I live up to that. How about you? How's your week been?
Pretty good. I just forgot to turn my light on. There we go. I think that's a bit better, actually. It's quite bright in here anyway, to be fair. Back to what I was looking for on Google, right? So the probability of being born, is 1 in 400 trillion.
Wow.
It's pretty serious, right?
It's pretty serious.
So it's a simple fluke that we were actually born.
A fluke or a miracle? Because I think everybody is proof of a miracle. I wrote a quote for my little girl, but I believe it to be true of everybody, which is, as long as you stay kind, you stay curious, you dream big, you should believe, because you are proof that miracles happen. We're all proof that miracles happen. And if we can take that mindset, imagine what we can do.
It's amazing, actually, the journey of sort of self-discovery and how that kind of fits in regards to our confidence around our behavior and this kind of stuff. And we've been unpacking this for nearly 10 months now. We've been going through this imposter syndrome topic, right? So we decided we were going to launch this the International Imposter Syndrome Day, right? And that's on April the 13th, and we're going to do loads of great stuff on that day. So I'm just get distracted by these pop-ups. They pop up like,
It's my friend Ellie. Hey, lovely. How are you?
Hello. So I just find it this week I've worked really, really hard, as you have, right? And I kind of need to be a bit more kind to myself, because I think looking back over the actual week, like we've achieved a lot, right? Like we launched a podcast, we've officially announced International Imposter Syndrome Day. We've done how many? Let me see. I released one podcast myself. I was a guest on 2 podcasts. I was on Clubhouse, which is quite epic, and it's just like, but yet the back of my brain's like, but you need to do more. And this is the biggest issue that we have, right? Is like the way that we sort of look at ourselves and what we achieve, and how the impatience kind of, maybe it drives us or not. I don't know. What's your view around impatience and that kind of stuff?
I think sometimes when we've got a passion, when we've got a drive to want to do something, we can become frustrated at our seeming lack of progress, because we just want to have achieved what we want to achieve, because we've got a why, we've got a reason why we're doing it. It's like at the moment, we're really driven by trying to help people to understand what imposter syndrome is, and then work out how to regain control of their inner critic and get out of their own way to be able to go and live the life that they really dream of. And because we know people are hurting right now, there's 70% of people are impacted by imposter syndrome at some point in their life. And right now with the pandemic, we're seeing more and more people that are coming, you know, that are joining in with those feelings. And so that's why we're so driven to try and provide that free advice, free support, to just say, actually, that you can get over this. And also, you're not alone. Because when you're in the throes of it, you absolutely believe it's only you. There's only you that's having that kind of mad conversation with yourself that you're not good enough, which I think is kind of so important, that we can help people understand that and hopefully regain that control and start to trust themselves that they can actually go and really achieve something.
I think it can be very, very frustrating though, right? Like like I was saying, like when you look back over what you've done, and because you sort of see the path ahead and you're like, well, but I want to be over there and I want to complete this and I want to do that, but I'm only just here, right? But I think that's when I kind of tend to look backwards over what I've done and say, well, actually, compared to where I was at the beginning of the week, I've actually achieved quite a lot. So I need to sort of be a little bit kinder to myself and perhaps maybe move a deadline a little bit to, you know, maybe a couple of days later or a week later. But I think also kind of overestimating the amount of work that you actually have, because you get stressed that you're not where you want to be. That's kind of what I seem to do. So I overestimate, you know, the amount of work that there's left because I expected myself to be there. So, you know, we need to complete something together, right, with our partner for this training that we're putting together, right? But like I expected it to be done. So then I kind of got a bit down and I was like, and then we kind of revisited it and reframed it. And now I sort of look at it and say, well, actually, it's not actually that much. Like we could probably finish it today, right, if we work together.
No, absolutely. And I think you're so right. And hi from New York, and also Ellie, yes. Bless you. I think we all do. We all have those moments where we start to question if we're good enough. And, you know, I certainly have them a lot of the time. But for me, having spent the last 4 years trying to work out, why am I so mean to myself? Why am I so critical? Why can I not see any value in what I do? And that's when I realized that actually it's because of our I am statements. And we all have them. They are basically formed by the time we're 7. They're enforced by the time we're 14. And they're pretty much embedded by the time that we're 21. And they're the things that drive us to think. So mine were, I'm not enough, I'm not livable, I'm always alone. And therefore, anything that happened in my life, I expected it to pull into one of those. And when it did, that reinforced, reaffirmed, and we create these belief systems. And the belief is like the tabletop. But every time we have an example where we didn't get it right, we weren't enough, somebody did leave us, something did break down, it's like putting another leg on the table of that belief. And before long, you've got the most stable table you're ever going to have. But the beauty is, what I've learned in the last 4 years, is that you can actually overcome it. You can create a brand new set of beliefs and dismantle the ones that aren't serving you, because your subconscious brain is your happiest little helper. So what it does is when you say, I'm not good at this, it doesn't understand the difference between helping and harming. So when you say that, it runs off into the library of your brain to bring back to you all the examples where you got it wrong. So then you go, I knew I could do it. I knew I got it wrong. I knew I wasn't enough. I knew I wasn't right. But what you have to do is ask yourself the next question, which is, are there any occasions where I do get this right? Because again, what will happen is your happy little helper will run back into that library and bring back all the times where you got it right, all the times where you did achieve something, where you did get it. So you can now look at this new set of beliefs and say, okay, so I can get it wrong, but I can get it right. And on that basis, what choice am I going to make now? And for me, one of the things I often say to myself is, what's the worst that can happen? And can I live with it? Because once you frame it that way, say, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I could look a bit stupid. Well, I'm not going to die. I'm just going to look stupid. And somebody's going to think I'm not very clever. Well, people think I'm not very clever all the time anyway, because I'm not always that clever. It's like, it's not going to be something that stops me from saying, actually, if sharing these thoughts, if sharing what we've learned helps just one person, then it's worth the risk of appearing stupid, because we're all vulnerable about something. And I guess my reflection on kind of this week is, we're seeing a lot more of that. It's resonating with a lot more people. And a reason for kind of starting up this reflections of the week was it's something I've been doing for coming up for 20 years. So I always did my reflections of the week when I was leading teams, to be able to share things that had gone well for individuals or for the team, a bit of an update of where the company was and what we were doing, a bit of an update of what I'd been doing or what I'd found out in the week, to just kind of create that sense of community. But it was also to provide a moment to allow us to see how far we'd come, because we often don't do that. We look at how far we've still got to go, but unless we take that moment to reflect on where we've been and acknowledge ourselves for what we have achieved in that week, it all just gets very hard. It gets very depressing, because it just feels like you're on a hamster wheel that's not going anywhere. And it's the reason why they've got camps like base camp and that when you're climbing Mount Everest, so that you can actually pause and reflect and acknowledge how far you've come, to give you the mental capacity to carry on with that climb. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to create here, is that safe space for people to come and join us, to be able to say, do you know what, this went really well for me this week, or this didn't go so well, but do you know what, I've made it through, I've learned something from it, and I'm going to take that learning into next week. Because I think if we can do that, if we can create that space where people can just have that community, they can say, do you know what, I did something quite well, or I surprised myself this week, then actually, hopefully, that will create a much more positive mindset for people. And as we know, the only thing that is greater than fear is hope. And hopefully, this could provide that space of hope for people.
Yeah, I hope so. And, I'll be happy if anyone wants to kind of drop me a message or drop Kim a message. You ever want to jump on and tell us, tell the world what your wins were for the week, or reflect on something that maybe upset you or whatever. We'll be happy to kind of talk to you about that. No problem. But I mean, what you're saying there is what we were sort of talking about this morning, right? And like how, I used to get really frustrated so that if I didn't complete something and I didn't finish something, it would actually cause me to have inactivity. So the stress behind the activity not being completed would just stop me in my tracks. And I'd be like, oh, I can't do anything now. Or I'm kind of too stressed to kind of do something, right? And I think this week has just been absolutely epic in the way that I've managed to kind of tame that beast, right? And it's been very interesting going over this imposter syndrome series of interviews with you. We've interviewed lots and lots of great people in the technology space around this, and everyone seems to have a similar way of kind of dealing with their inner imposter. I don't think all of them actually necessarily had imposter syndrome per se, right? But I think they definitely at some point had imposter syndrome symptoms, perhaps when they were on stage. For example, Michael Tobin, OBE, he was on stage with Bill Gates talking on a panel, right? And he said that at that point he was just kind of like, he didn't say he felt like an imposter, but he sort of felt like, I'm next to Bill Gates here, like I'm standing here on a panel, right? So, and everyone seems to have this at certain times, right? Like it doesn't happen all the time, but I think what was interesting for me is to actually go through the statements that I was sort of saying to myself. So, you've explained this very well to me on a number of occasions. So I'm going to try and feed it back to you, right? So basically, when we're a child, we embed these statements in our brains, right? Hi, G. And so we embed these statements in our brains, right? So up until I think was it 15 years old? Is that roughly the age where?
Yeah, broadly, it's between 6 and 7, and therefore again between 14 and 15, and then broadly 21. So there's always a big range in there, but it's just to kind of, I guess, give people that placeholder of broadly where it comes from.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So then basically what we're doing is we're actually telling ourselves in the back of our mind, we've got this negative self-chat that's basically going on, that unless we actually deal with it, it's gonna basically sabotage our efforts to achieve in our careers, right? And that was something that I found very, very interesting. And I've been unpacking that probably for about 3 weeks now, I reckon. Yeah, that's a big number there, G. And so I think it's absolutely fascinating when you get to change those beliefs that you have about yourself, and how you can really change your life by being happy with where you are, and then enjoying the journey to where you want to go, right? Instead of sitting there sabotaging yourself, trying to get somewhere and being dissatisfied with where you are and where you get to, because you're still sabotaging yourself, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And our minds are the most powerful thing. And we don't really use them always to their best, because we don't realize. We think we're controlling everything with our conscious brain, with our thoughts. And yet the reality is our subconscious brain is the thing that's actually moving us around. It's the thing that's taking action. It's the thing that is constantly chattering away to us. And that inner critic is actually our inner child. And they're trying really hard to keep us safe. But they're not mature enough for the current situation, because they're just a child. So actually what they really need for us to do right now is to reach in and hold their hand and say, it's all right, I've got this. We're going to be fine. Because actually we've got a more mature brain now. We know that we can do some of these things, but we've got to be able to understand how that works to enable us to do that reframe, to go, actually, it's not trying to harm me. It's trying to save me, but it's trying to save me in the way a child would try to save us, based on love, but not based with the same level of capability, because they're just learning. Sorry, I just got slightly distracted by a question. So actually, we often talk negatively to ourselves because we are remembering that childlike thing where we got it wrong. Because as children, we had to learn how to do these things and we didn't know how to do them. So as we were doing them, we'll have got them wrong sometimes. We'll have made mistakes. And it will also depend on how those mistakes were treated. So if every time we made a mistake, we were told we were naughty, or we were disruptive, or we will attach that negative emotion to the fear of getting it wrong. And then we carry that into our future. So now we worry as adults that, if I get it wrong, something bad's going to happen to me. I'm going to be ostracized. I'm going to get told off. I'm going to get shouted at. I still look at it now and go, I'm 48 this year. And I still am very careful of not wanting to get things wrong in case, I upset my parents. And I think, you're nearly 48, single mum, you live on your own. What are they going to do? Ground you? It's like, you've got to be able to sometimes pull yourself back from that. But it's understanding that actually it is just that inner child. And our brains were designed originally to keep us safe. We had predators all around us. So we are naturally predisposed to look for the fear rather than to look for the hope, because we needed to survive. But we're millions of years on from that now, and actually our brains are still coded the same way. So what we have to do is do that work, if we want to get past it, to recode them, to go and change that belief system so that we can actually change that feeling that we have and trust ourselves to move forward, to do more, to make a bigger impact. And I think for me that's my passion. It's my why. Having lived with this myself for 45 years, I think, at the point that I went and started to go, I need to change this. I need to do something different. This is not the way to live. I know how at times it can be really debilitating. You just can't see any value that you bring, and you doubt in every moment. And I don't want anybody else to feel like that. It's an awful way to live. And therefore, if I can help, if by sharing tips and advice or coaching or anything, you can help somebody to regain control, then it's worth doing. It's worth putting our head above the parapet and potentially getting it shot off, to say, do you know what? I know it works because I've been there and I've had it. And don't get me wrong, I still sometimes have it every now and again. But the difference now is I know now that it is actually, I'm being triggered. It's my inner child. And therefore I can do the reframe and regain the control to say, so that the period between being triggered and moving back into control is so much quicker now. And one of the other things, I'm sorry, I'm just conscious we've got another question. Great one, Ellie, because that's actually one of my big reasons for discovery. So I remember going to write a letter to my little girl. So I wasn't very well. I wasn't certain if I was going to survive. So I went to write the letter that was going to try and impart all the things I wanted her to know in her life and give her all of the hope and the trust and the skills I possibly could if I wasn't going to be there to give them to her as her mum. I didn't really know ways to do that, because where do you start with that letter? So I remember I went upstairs to see her, and I popped my head in and I looked in at her, fast asleep, dreaming about a day, holding a lion, happy with life. And it hit me in that moment that the voice we talk to ourselves becomes the voice we teach our children to talk to themselves. And it was like the world stopped, but it was probably just my heart. And I remember saying, if I survive this, I will do whatever it takes to go and change that voice, to make sure that my legacy is not to create that voice for Scarlett, not to be what that does. And one of the things that I've done, Ellie, and hopefully that this will resonate, is like any biased mum, I believe that as long as my little girl is kind and she tries, that there is nothing in the world that she can't do. And so now I ask myself, when I'm starting to criticize, I ask myself the 3 steps. So do I get this wrong? Yes, because you give me lots of examples. Are there any examples where I get it right? And then my third one is, if this were Scarlett in this situation, with this opportunity, what advice would I give her? Well, my advice would be kind and try, love, because what's the worst that can happen? And therefore, if that's the advice I'd give her, and I love her more than anything in the world, that's the advice I have to take for myself, because our children don't learn by what we say, they learn by what we do. So we have to make sure that our lips and hips match. What we're saying and what we're doing are the same, that they level up, because that's going to be where we have a real impact, is thinking that through. I also reinforce with her every day all the things that I'm really proud of. So the last thing we do at night is we'll chat through, do you know I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you for these reasons, and give her specific examples. And I love you, and I love you for these reasons. And I'm grateful about you today. I'm grateful for all of these reasons. And we do a gratitude journal. So I'm trying to embed in her all the things I've learned over the last 4 years that are helping me to rebuild my view of myself and my confidence. So because I know they're working on me, I'm starting to use them already on her. And I'm thrilled to say, I have got a beautiful, very confident, happy little girl. And I'm blessed with, and I hope that I don't mess it up, because that's the other thing we all worry about, don't we? Children don't come with a manual. So we might make mistakes, but I think it's in admitting those mistakes and learning from them, so that they can see that it's okay to make a mistake. It's not the mistake that defines us. It's what we do about the mistake. It's how we take accountability and we try and learn to ensure we don't do it again.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's fascinating when you think of how people achieve things, right? Like Thomas Edison, the light bulb, yeah? Like was it you? Someone was talking to me about this. It might have been you. And it was like 1,000 times Thomas Edison tried to create the light bulb, right? And he failed 1,000 times.
It's actually 10,000.
Pardon?
It's actually 10,000.
10,000, yeah.
Yeah, so his quote, because I love a quote, his quote says that I didn't invent the light bulb, I found 10,000 ways not to invent the light bulb. But what he did was he kept going, he kept moving forward. His belief that actually it could be done, it could be achieved, was the thing that spurred him on. And I think if you think about it, if I said to any of you that in tomorrow, when you wake up, you're going to have to learn how to walk or talk or run or jump or skip, you'd be overwhelmed. We'd all be overwhelmed. And yet at our most vulnerable, we've already achieved it. So I looked into that because I was fascinated, because I watched my little girl and her friends, and they're trying to walk, they fall over, they get up, they fall over, they get up, they fall over, they get up. They never stop getting up and trying again. And I was like, I wonder why that is. So what is it that's so different about us when we're children? And I've come to the conclusion that, in my opinion, it's down to three things. So the first is, as humans, we just want to be the same as each other. We want to fit in. We are pack animals, so we want to ensure that we are liked. And therefore, to be liked, we'll try and be like each other. So everyone else can walk and talk and run and jump and skip, so I want to do that too. The second one is, we've not really understood how to say no and mean it. So we can say it, but actually we can't enforce it yet. We're too young, we're too vulnerable. And the third, and perhaps for me the most important one, and hopefully for anybody who's been near children when children are learning to walk, this will resonate. But whenever there are children learning to walk, you look around them and there will be adults there going, come on, love, you're so close, you've got this, you can do it. And what we're doing there is we're lending them our belief. And it's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't mean we can only do it with our children. We can lend anybody our belief. And once we loan them that belief, we give them that courage to say, we know you've got this, then actually they can find the courage of their own. So one of the gifts that I think is there for all of us to give is lend people our belief. When you genuinely believe that they can do it, tell them, share that with them. But also think about every time you are given an opportunity to do a new job, to do a new task within your job, to work with a new client, whatever that task is, that person is basically lending you their belief in you that you can do it. So borrow that belief. And I guess that kind of pulls me around to one of the other things that I realized about imposter syndrome that really didn't resonate with me, because inadvertently I was making my opinion more important. Well, I don't think my opinion is more important. Most of the time I felt like a massive great fraud and didn't think I should be there in the slightest. So that didn't really ring true. And yet I realized that despite whatever accolade I got, whatever award I won, whatever job I was given, whatever promotion I got, I still believed that my opinion that I was rubbish was better than their opinion. Well, some of these people were the most inspiring people I've ever had the privilege of working with. I aspire to be like them even today. So what gave me the right to assume that my opinion was better than their opinion? Because they were brighter, more eloquent, more educated than I was. And I trusted them. And I also knew that they didn't say things they didn't mean. So I chose to try and borrow their belief. So for anybody who's lent me their belief, I'm eternally grateful. And I now do my best to pay that forward, to share that with other people. And I guess as a coach, that is one of the beauties of what I do. You get to do that for people. And it's lovely to see when somebody thought they couldn't do something and then they come back to let you know how well it went, and that they now have that belief for themselves. So I really encourage us to think about, where can I lend my belief this week to make a real impact?
Do you think sometimes, though, it's just that we're surrounded by idiots?
I don't know, love. Why?
In terms of, look, I know that's a real disruptive comment, right? But like my inner child just plays up in these situations.
I know, love. I work with you every day.
So, no, because sometimes, right, we're just surrounded by idiots that don't know how to lead us in the right direction and to instill confidence in us, right? And so basically they're managing employees, they're managing people, and they're working with you just in the wrong way, right? I mean, we were talking about someone recently who's having problems with within a very large corporation, and how like the culture, just this one guy came from America, he moved into this business and started shaking things up and everything else. And it's like, but actually he doesn't need to do that. And so it's like, what, why? My attitude is, why do people kind of do that, I
think the challenge that we've got is, being a leader is a really tough gig, because actually you've got to lead people, but you've got to lead yourself too. And who teaches us? So we'll go on lots of courses that talk to us about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or Blanchard's situational task management, or the 5 Why theory. As you know, there's millions of these models in my head.
They're all in your head, yeah.
In my head, I could recite them if anyone was really bored. I've got 30 years of going and doing the models, but what they don't do is talk to us about actually what's really important is the belief system. If we can create the belief system, if we can flex that belief muscle, that's going to be where we have a really big impact. Because I thought for years that my biggest vulnerability was the fact that I was an ex-hairdresser. That somebody'd find out one day and go, oh my God, we put the hairdresser on the board, quick, get her off, that's awkward. And it didn't happen. But then I realised in digging into it that actually being a hairdresser is my superpower. Because the thing that they taught you to do as a hairdresser was really listen and hold that space for people to make it a great experience, and to listen to understand, because you wanted to know what was important to them, what they were looking for, what they were trying to achieve, and then deliver that for them and leave them with a feeling of increase, that they feel better as a result of the interaction than they did before. And if you achieved that, then you were doing pretty good as a hairdresser, and you would get people coming back in and you'd have a solid client base, which I was very fortunate I did. But then I moved into corporate world, and you were told constantly, vulnerability is a bad thing. Don't show your vulnerability. Don't make mistakes. The real fear of failure. I remember in one organization once standing up and saying that actually one of the things that's true is just about all, not all, but just about all of the self-made millionaires have actually been bankrupt. So they've made their biggest mistake ever, and they've learned from it. And there was somebody around went, do you want us to bankrupt the? No, I didn't mean that. What I meant was, it's not the mistake. It's what we do with the mistake. It's looking at it and saying, I got it wrong. Why did I get it wrong? Where did it go wrong? Because just because something went wrong doesn't mean to say it won't go right next time. But what we've got to do is look for the lesson. What part of it? Because when we think about all the great inventions, they got it wrong thousands and thousands of times. But each time they went back and they just reviewed and tweaked. It doesn't have to be a big step change. Often, I think it's Tony Robbins that says it's the 2 millimeter shift. It's not the big step, it's the little bit. It's the fact that, diamonds are just rocks that did really well under pressure. And if we can do the same, if we can keep going back and saying, okay, what am I learning? What here might be able to be tweaked? What bit of that worked? Because it won't all have gone wrong. Bits of it will have gone okay. But also to learn how to share vulnerability without losing your credibility. And I guess this is a space I do a lot of work in at the moment, because for years leaders have been told not to be vulnerable. But actually, if you can share a little bit of your vulnerability without losing your credibility, you create a safe space for other people to be able to share their vulnerability. And that's where you really come into your own as a leader, because once you know what they're vulnerable about, you can help them, and then they're less vulnerable. So actually, together you grow and you drive that real belief system. So I've just got another comment. So true. Sophie, I absolutely love it. I use this one all of the time. In fact, earlier this week, Nat found a picture for me of Albert Einstein, because I think, and they're not the only ones. There's a couple of songs. So there's a song by Eminem that the underlying tone is Imposter Syndrome, and one by Justin Bieber. So even people today that we would think possibly don't have any challenges, any concerns, actually, you can't be certain, because we all go through it. And I think Albert Einstein's quote, if I remember, is something along the lines of, the esteem within which my works are held leave me feeling like an unlikely swindler. So even somebody recognized globally as a genius doubted themselves. And I think, for me, that gives me real comfort that actually it's not just me. It's not just me that's coming out with these crazy thoughts. Really, really great people were there. And it did make me question whether or not it's the label. So are we actually imposters, or are we just insecure overachievers? Because it's the fact that we've achieved something that we worry that we shouldn't have done, that we weren't worthy of, that we could get that taken away, that drives that voice, that inner critic, that person that's going, it's going to get taken away, it's not yours. But I think when we, from a kind of that leadership piece, one of the key things I think for leaders to understand is that at our base, we all just want to be listened to, we want to be understood, and we want to be respected. And as long as we can provide that for our people, where we listen to understand, not to interject, that we respect them at all times. That doesn't mean to say we don't disagree. You disagree, you don't disrespect, because people are allowed to have that opinion. But the more we can do that, the more we can get comfortable with being vulnerable, with saying, do you know what, I don't know that. I'll go and find out that. Or I don't know that, but I know someone who can. And create, I always recruit people that are significantly better than me because I know I'm not good in certain areas, but I'm paid on behalf of the organisation to deliver the best result that I can. And the best result that I can is to go and get people that are really, really good at the areas that I know I'm not good in. And then I make it my mission to get really good at understanding them, understanding what is it they need to thrive, and then doing my best to go out there and deliver that for them. Because there's a really terrifying statistic which says that 57% of people leave their boss, not the organisation. And when I heard that many years ago, and I was a leader, I was terrified, because I was like, that means more than 1 in 2 people that leave my team, leave me. I therefore need to start to make that change. I need to ensure that I'm delivering what they need from me to enable them to want to stay. And once you start to look at it from that point of view, instead of it being what did I need from them to achieve, it's like, what did they need from me to thrive? And if I do that, then they're going to do their job, because I believe the majority of people have positive intentions. So we don't get up and go, I wonder how to be really rubbish at my job today. I wonder how to really let somebody down. I wonder how to really upset or hurt somebody. So the intention is honourable. And I'm not sure if this resonates with people listening, hopefully, but have you ever noticed that when you give somebody some constructive feedback, or when you get some for yourself, the first thing we do is we defend what we were trying to achieve, because we weren't trying to get it wrong. I mean, we want people to kind of understand that and know that actually it's, we're not wanting to get it wrong. So I think, one of the things that I now do, if I'm giving anybody feedback, is I start the conversation with, I think what you are trying to achieve is this. I think this is your goal. So we work together and we clarify and we confirm, and we say, yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. That is exactly what I want you to do. So that's fantastic news. So we're on the same page. The goal is the right goal. What I now need to talk to you about is, whilst that's what you're trying to achieve, this is what's actually happening. So you're not quite aligned to what you're trying to achieve. And I want to help you. I want to ensure that you achieve the goal that you want to achieve, because it's so important. And therefore, you've immediately gone from being somebody who's criticizing them to their ally, because you've taken the time to work with them on what was their intention. What you've been able to do is say, before I tell you why you're going wrong, I'm letting you know I think you're a good person. I think you were trying to do the right thing. I think you've got good intentions, and I'm on your side. So you take away any of that awkwardness in those conversations, and it allows you to then be able to move in to tell them where they are getting in their own way, and then help them to tweak their path. Because again, it's probably not going to be a massive shift from where you want them to be. They just need to make the odd little change. I remember years and years ago, I had a guy who worked for me, and I lovingly called him Armageddon Boy, because he'd constantly get up to ask me questions like, if there were an Armageddon, Kim, would the insurance still pay out? Really? Has anybody asked you that question? And I was a very young, inexperienced manager at the time. And he was like, no. So do me a favour, go back on the phone. I'll go and check with the insurance company. If anybody asks you that question in the interim, put your hand up. And I thought, we got to the end of his probation, and he was going to have his probation extended because he'd not met it. And we sat in that meeting, and I remember it being quite a challenging meeting. His father had come with him because he was one of the very senior directors there. And he was like, Kim, you and I both know the MI is not great. And I was like, we do, absolutely. But we also know that MI doesn't have a personality. And by that, what I mean is it doesn't dislike your child. So it's looking at, it's equally bad for everybody. And I'm looking at his results across everybody else's. It's like, okay, fair point. I said, but actually what I'm seeking to understand is what is it you need? Because there's a driver behind this. I believe you're trying to do the right thing. I believe you want to get it right. So talk to me. And it transpired, he was a young kid. He was like just under 18 and he'd got his first job selling insurance on the phone. The poor kid was terrified. So once I knew that, once we were able to get away from his being all bravado, I don't need anything, to actually, I'm just a bit scared, I was able to change the pace, have a different conversation with him. And he went from being somebody who was going to be possibly not able to pass their probation to our top performer in a really short period of time. And I remember a couple of years later when I was leaving, I was really proud when his dad came to find me to say, we just wanted to say thank you because you really helped him. You didn't just help him in his job, you helped him in his confidence because you gave him time. And that's always stuck with me. It was probably 20 odd years ago and it's still one of my proudest moments because you suddenly realize the impact you can have. And even though I knew that and it stuck with me, I still thought I was a rubbish leader, that I was incapable of helping people, that I couldn't move them forward. But I'm in the process of writing a book, and one of the chapters is life only makes sense in the rearview mirror. Because it does. It only makes sense when we look back at it. Because when we're in it, when we're in that moment, we are responding to the emotion. We think we're responding to the facts, but we're responding to the emotion. So what I now do is go, what's happened and what have I made it mean? Because I'm responding to what I've made it mean, not what's happened. And if you can pull yourself back to the what's happened, you can look at it and go, okay, so actually all that's happened is this. It's hit one of my triggers. It's made me feel that they don't like me, that they don't respect me, that they wish I would just shut up and stop talking, which possibly people might be thinking round about now. But actually what you've got to look at is factually where did that go, and then try and respond to that fact.
I think it's quite exciting actually when you look at what you want to achieve and then you look back to the sort of turning points in your career. I've been doing that a lot recently because I speak to a lot of people. Some of them are really stuck, some of them have achieved like massive things, and because they've had maybe they've had kids or they've maybe they've lost their job or their business or whatever, they're kind of in a bit of a transitional phase, right? And I kind of turn back and go to them, I say to them, what happened when you did that? Like, you were like one of the most important people in that entire industry, but now you are actually not feeling confident, right? And it's like, well, sometimes you just need to take a note and say, and speak to people who know you and say, well, how do you see me? Like, how do you view my career? How do you view me as a person? Yeah. And I think that can really, really help because people just get absolutely stuck in their own mind, right? With their own kind of issues that are, sometimes created externally or can be internally, but they kind of just get stuck, right? But it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, we love a label. And Adele, I'll come to you in a sec. Lovely to have you here. But we love a label. So when anything that happens to us, we label it and then we respond based on that label. So right now, obviously, we're still in lockdown and we could say I'm stuck at home or I'm safe at home. One word difference, but it has a massive impact on how we show up and in our psyche and what we do in the world. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is go and look at their labels. And it's a great example that you've got that, because I did this years ago and went out to ask people that I trusted, what are the one or two things that you would say described my strengths, and what are the one or two things that you'd say would describe the things that I am struggling with or I get in my own way. And they came back with brave and fearless. And I was like, I don't understand. I live my life in fear pretty much every day. So I can't see where you're coming from. So I had to ask a few more questions. And their view was, you've upped sticks and moved across country for jobs you not certainly know how to do, to areas where you know nobody. We'd say that's brave and fearless. And fascinating. I thought flighty and a little bit stupid. But I wonder, therefore, how different would my life be if I used their labels instead of mine? So I think constantly questioning our labels is really important. And great question. So what do we do if it's wrongly used by the person following? I think what we've got to do is be able to take accountability for the part we play and not become accountable for everybody else's. I used to be really, really bad at this. People would come to me with a problem, and I would metaphorically, if we called that problem a monkey, I would metaphorically take the monkey off them, and I would go, oh, well, I'd do this, I'd do that. I'd still be left with the monkey. They'd be off somewhere, and it's now my problem. And I realized that actually it's not my responsibility. I can't choose how they're going to behave. What I can do is choose my response. So if somebody is misusing it, then I choose to go and have a conversation. And that can be complicated, can't it? Going and having that conversation and you think it might be conflicted. And there's an amazing book that I recommend to anybody who'll listen to me, which is Crucial Conversations. And it talks about the fact that there are moments in our life, whether that's our personal life, our business life, just life in general, where a conversation becomes crucial. And by that, what I mean is there's some emotion in it. And that emotion is driven from fear. Either one or both of you is fearful of something. You're fearful of getting it wrong. You're fearful of getting told off. You're fearful of being sold to. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's some fear. And what happens is, when we're in those situations, we respond with either violence or silence. So either we get more aggressive, more assertive, louder, more angry, which doesn't help, or we get silent and we walk away. Neither one of them helps because the situation is still there. So what I now encourage people to do is frame it. Frame your way out of it. So if I were in that situation where I've got a follower who's not using it properly, I would possibly go and say something like, I'm really conflicted about having this conversation. However, I know that I need to, because I'm not sure that you've really understood what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I'm 100% committed to ensuring that you achieve your goal. And therefore, I want to chat to you about what's happening. In doing the framing, what you're doing is you're creating a safe space. So I'm 100% committed to finding something that works for you. I know I need to let you know because you're getting in your own way. So I'm not here to shout at you. I'm not here to tell you off. I'm here to resolve things and resolve things in a calm and unemotive way. So, I'm a big believer as a leader that we need to lead with our emotional intelligence, that it comes from our heart first and then our heads. But when you're dealing with conflict, when you're dealing with challenge, actually one of the skills you've got to have is to be able to remove the emotion, to be able to help people, to say, actually, look at what's happening and look at what you're making it mean. I've unfortunately over the years had to do a number of major redundancy programs, and they're horrible. Telling somebody that they're going to lose their job is the most heartbreaking thing you'll ever have to do as a leader. But one of the challenges is we make it about us. As the leader, we feel a bit ashamed that it's come to this, that we weren't able to better lead the organisation to not have this outcome. We also feel a bit under attack because nobody ever said, yay, redundancy, where do I sign? When you're talking enforced redundancies. So it's not going to go down well. That it's not going to be handled very well. And therefore, we inadvertently go a little bit on the attack because the best form of defence is attack. So we'll change our language, we'll change our tone, and we'll change our style. And that's why a lot of people that go through these take it into their future. They believe that it was because they weren't good enough, that they weren't a valued employee. And it's just not true. So I remember when I did the first one of mine, standing up and saying, the first thing that I need you to realise is this is not about you. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's not about you, but it's happening to you. So you are going to have to live with the result of what I'm about to say. The reason I say it's not about you is it's not because you're not an amazing employee. It's not because I wouldn't love for you to continue to work for us for as long as you wanted to. It's not because you're not really good at what you do. Because if any of those three things were true, that you weren't good at those, we'd have already been performance managing you, and we're not. So this is happening despite how good you are. And the reason I'm telling you that is I don't want you to take it into your future. I don't want you to doubt your ability when you go to your next employer, because you are amazing at what you do. And
Thank
also,
you.
And also, I want you to come back and work for us at the point that I lead us to a position of growth. And I think it's in having the courage to step into the difficult conversations and take them back to fact. Because throughout that period, and we did a 90-day consultation, I used to go every single week and sit with people and say, talk to me about how you're feeling, what's going on for you right now, what are your thoughts? And that was because actually the human brain doesn't like gaps. So in the absence of a fact, it fills it with a story. And the story is always much more fantastic than the reality is. You know, if some of the stories about me were true, I would be living a really exciting life right now. But you know, they're not. But I know the facts.
You're talking to me. What do you mean? How rude! I'm deeply, deeply insulted now.
Oh, you're not.
I'm gonna cry. Seriously, I'm gonna put my sunglasses on to cover up my eyes while I cry.
I cry.
All right?
I'm so sorry. I would never mean to hurt anybody. But you know, you look at it and go, actually, you've got to pull these parts back to say, you know, facts are your friends. So in those moments when people were going through, you know, I feel like I'm unemployable, that I don't know where I'm going. It's like that's not true, and that's not a fact. So let's pull it back. Let's look at what is it that you're really good at. Where is it that you excel? How do we help you craft the right story to be able to go out there and continue to be the amazing employee that you were before? And I think that's our new role in the new world as leaders. Our role is to help people build that compelling story, help them understand the part that they need to play to enable them to go in and play it, and to, I guess, to create that collective belief system where we're going to learn together, we're going to grow together, because all of the amazing geniuses in the world, all of the people that have ever given us something to inspire us about, have all said the same thing, which is you just have to keep learning. You just never stop. And I think, you know, that is it. That's why we're on our journey of a thirst for knowledge. I'm constantly trying to find out new things, because the more I can learn, the more I can grow. Hopefully, the more I can help. And that's kind of why we do this.
Well, that's why I'm really excited to hear about these things that you're learning. Actually, the facial recognition thing. I mean, like, that's just fascinating. Like, you're basically learning how to read people's faces, but not just in the context of moving, right? Actually, in the context of a picture. So if you've got a headshot, you can actually look at that person and say, well, more than likely they are going to be this type of person, and they're going to like this type of communication, right? Like, based upon their actual facial expressions and features. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's not saying they'll definitely be like that, but it's saying they're going to be predisposed to be more like that. So then what you can do is tailor your communication to ask questions to seek to understand. But it allows you to better prepare before you go and have a meeting with somebody, because you can look at it and say, you know, I'm a talker, as we've all noticed.
Yeah, I'm just letting you talk. I'm absorbing information here.
But if I meet somebody who actually is I just want you to get to the point kind of person, and I can see that from their picture, then I know to kind of tailor the way that I communicate, to put less of the anecdotes in, to stop thinking I'm so funny, recognise that, you know, this is not a one-woman comedy stand-up show, but actually it's about trying to pass over a message, and I quieten myself down, so it allows me to hopefully have more impact, because I'm trying to tailor myself to that person. And it brings me back to an amazing thing that we had years and years ago, and I worked at Egg, and they had this thing called Dancing with Customers, and I loved it, because the idea was listen to your customer, listen to their pitch and tone, and try and think, what dance would they be? Now, I talk very fast. I try and temper it. This is me tempered. So you can imagine what I'm like when I'm excited. So if I were a dance, I would probably be something like a jazz dance. I'm going to be pretty fast paced. If I'm talking to somebody who actually is a waltz, imagine what that partnership would be like.
I know exactly what that person would be. I know exactly what that person would be going through right now. I'm actually feeling more like a very slow drum beat.
So you see, I clearly need to temper myself and be a little bit less, me on Barocca, and calm things down to make the conversation flow. Because if not, what we're going to do is it's going to feel uncomfortable. And for me, because I used to dance, the dancing analogy works for me, because it's like, I can see how that would be. I could see how that could be a challenge. And therefore, I now try and tailor myself to their dance style, or to their prominence from what we're showing in our faces. And not just from our pictures, but also we give ourselves away all the time with the way that our muscles move. And that's not to be able to call people out on it, but it's to be able to say, okay, I'm not sure this is quite doing what they wanted me to do. I'm going to ask some better questions. I'm going to seek to understand. And I think the more we seek to understand, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Einstein that said that he was just passionately curious, and I love that.
It was.
Yeah, and for me, that's the piece. It's like, I choose to live my life being passionately curious. I'm curious about people. I'm curious about their story. I'm curious about what I can learn. I'm just curious about what I can do. And it's such a lovely way of living, to just be passionately curious, because it doesn't matter that I don't know what I don't know, because I'm going to learn it if I choose to keep moving forward. And I think that's kind of, I guess, what spurs me on.
But that's like the childish curiosity, right? Which is how to learn anything the easy way, right? Like if you're curious about something and you want to learn about it, then that just becomes, it just makes it fun, right? Otherwise, why would you even want to learn anything? Yeah, it's tiring learning something. If you don't enjoy what you're learning, it's very, very tiring. I mean, I suppose you can still learn it. And then eventually when you go and you look back on what you've learned, then you can go, well, actually, I know why I went through that pain, because I really needed to learn it. But then if you were excited about what you were learning, how much easier would it be? It'd just be much, much easier, really. But like in terms of this week, right? Like we've had problems, right? We've had problems. You've had a problem with your website. I was frustrated. I was so frustrated that I couldn't just complete what we wanted to complete. I was really frustrated. Yeah. But I think it's actually, in the past, I would have probably looked at that frustration and said, well, actually, I can't handle this, and I'm just going to ignore it and demotivate myself to further action, right? Whereas now I've kind of gone past that point of, actually, I might be frustrated that I haven't got to C, but actually I'm kind of between B and C, and I'm really closer to C than I was 2 days ago. So actually I can turn around and go, well, I'm pretty proud of myself, really. I'm proud of us for what we've achieved, that's kind of what I've learned this week, really. And people just love to tell you their stories, though. That's something that I'm really getting into at the moment, like listening to people's stories, just speaking with Jonathan Chase earlier as well, and kind of listening to some of the stories that he's got, just made me smile, really, to be honest.
Oh yeah, it was amazing, because we learn so much, and I think we do. We learn so much through stories, and they are life's great leveler. Because the one other thing that is true is that, irrelevant of our age, our race, our gender, our culture, our social standing, is that we all teach and learn through stories. We've been doing it since the cavemen drawings. We did it with the hieroglyphics, with the Egyptians, and we do it today. we pass on our stories. It's the way that we teach people. And therefore, for me, that's why I love hearing other people's stories. I will often, when I connect with people, go, I can't wait to hear more about your story or your journey, because that's going to be how we learn. And then it embeds something in us that we can take into our future.
That reminds me, I need to finish my book, or I'm going to get in big trouble. And you've got to finish yours as well. You're nearly there, right? And that's exciting. Your book, your new book, it's very exciting. And
thank you.
I'm in particular, I'm just looking forward to some of the funny kind of stories and like what you've learned from those experiences. Like that, I think that's just, it's just fascinating, really, to read other people's lessons and sort of say, so I know why you went through that pain to kind of get to that is very, very interesting. So yeah, I think next week's going to be a very good week. And, if anyone watching this, if you want to jump on and like reflect with us or, talk about what happened during your week, feel free to kind of message either Kim or I, and we can kind of interview you next Friday. It will be, I think, 1:15 next Friday, UK time.
It's not going to be next Friday, is it?
We're sorry.
Easter holiday, but we'll be back on the 9th.
Of course. I forgot all about that.
See, that's why I'm your PA.
I've got an executive PA. That's amazing. That is. It's really tough to find one of those these days.
Brilliant. So on that note, I'd just like to thank everybody who's watched and listened to our craziness. And hopefully, if you'd like to join us, please do DM us. We'd love to hear your stories and get you on to share your news with the rest of the audience. And in the interim, I guess all there is to say is, Nat, it's always a pleasure, my love. I am loving working with you.
Don't forget International Imposter Syndrome Days on the 13th of April.
Absolutely. So please get in touch with that as well. The link has been dropped into the chat. And we will see you soon. In the interim, have an amazing weekend. Take care.
Thank you.